That one.
Ready, brace, lower. Ready, brace, lift. Gently.
Yeah. So yeah, get a few people in there, sit down.
Should have talking at the front.
Lower. Lower.
The board is going to go to stretcher. We're going to need the just do the rope.
Yeah, it's going to be just do.
Nice and steady, guys. Nice and steady. Because as a casualty, you do not want to be bouncing around.
Stop, reset.
Slow down a bit on the red. Hold on blue.
Hold on red, haul on blue. Keep slack on the blue, slack on the blue.
Pull on the red line on the back of the frame. I'm going to tilt them up.
Right.
And then you get like a centre.
Right folks, we want to just sort of come into a big circle so we don't have to shout across the forest, and we'll have a quick debrief on today, and then people can go and get changed, and we've got some sunshine to finish the afternoon, which is nice. So firstly an apology, which I'll then retract immediately. I always think these days are a little bit rushed, and so sorry for that, but I'd take that away as well, because I think it's actually valuable that we do get as much done in a short amount of time as we can. You could spend 2 days doing what we've done today, and you'd still have things to practice, learn, try again, do slightly different, what have you. But I think, you know, keeping it action-packed was good. In, you know, if you think what you've done today, well, what would you take out of it? What would you, you know, not do that you then have to sort of miss out to sort of, you know, have longer to do the rest of it? So it's good that we get a lot done in a short time, and it's an ideal venue to do that with close, you know, sort of proximity to rotate around. What I will do though is I'll take account of the faff factor getting going in the beginning and add a little bit more. I mean, I added 10 minutes, but it wasn't enough, was it, to the first session to sort of get us underground, get us going on a future occasion. But I think we sort of picked up the time, and we actually caught up by the afternoon. We were sort of finishing at 2:30 on the third rotation, and it meant we had a bit more time. But it's always sort of getting that kit underground, getting sorted and getting started, isn't it? So that's an immediate takeaway for me. So we had 4 different sessions, and just sort of thought if we quickly mention them each by, you know, one at a time, and anything people want to chip in as thoughts and feedback on those sort of activities and how they went and lessons learned. So the CAS Care bit, which was with Joe and Gareth, probably the first time as a team that we've had a play around with a tent, other than those who were on the rescue in November. But we've, you know, we haven't really had the kit, we haven't done it. We've had Kisu's bothy, you know, the nylon ones, but we haven't quite done that before. And I know I wasn't watching all the session, but you know, Gareth and Joe were getting out hot packs, various other things to look at as well. So any comments on that? Any sort of top tip, Henry?
2 things. One, the little rubber bits come off the clips. We'll be chasing those. The tiny cable ties probably sort that. And the other one is to come on a bit of cardboard, which disintegrates when you take it off, so maybe a bit of plastic or something like that.
We'll put it on a bit of plastic. Do you use the little nuts? No way you're going to get them in anywhere. It's
anything
sandstone
like that.
in
It's
there.
down there, Nicky.
You need like a Land Rover nut to get in to some of those
Is it
holes.
worth keeping them in there then, or they were just like a thought?
I don't know, you know, in limestone there might well be a lot more fishes than there were down there. You know, we were reduced to sort of using shot holes.
Use the shot holes and wedge the pegs in with rocks.
Yeah,
most of them.
I mean, it's only going to be a light top, isn't it?
Yeah.
So wooden wedges.
You get them, pass them in a rock.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're like a V, aren't they? You know, old, you know,
Yeah.
they don't need to be in massively deep. So, you know, just when they're under tension, they'll hold. Because usually pebbles. Yeah, that's it. I did say that to someone, go old school climbing and just put a pebble in it, drop it in the crack, and you know, go round it.
Even old school rock pitons would do.
Get a roll of 2mm paracord.
Paracord, yeah.
A lot more versatile and stronger, and it won't rot.
And Joel suggested as well, perhaps maybe in the middle at the top, you could always put
Some extra eyelets, maybe.
an eyelet
Just
in the middle, so you could always raise it up as well.
Just to loop the centre of either sort of long end, so you can make, with a cord then, you can make an apex like that for whatever situation. Because also with an eyelet in the middle, you can stop water pooling.
Yeah.
This foil, over time, delaminates and you're just left with a clear plastic sheet. So you've got to watch out for that, you know, don't leave it in there for 5 years, take it out and expect it still to have foil on it, because it probably won't. So watch out for that. And the other thing is, I think with the team, you've got a few quid now, I reckon it's worth making up a modified kissu. You can make a kissu, like a square top, and the arts, and it's take up bugger all space, and you won't need to spend loads of time faffing about trying to get a really flimsy tent made up. It's got its place, but I don't see why you don't have like a modified kissu for that. You can get them all sorts of sizes.
We can look into that.
Yeah.
And does anyone here know Andy Rumming? Ex-Reading Unicaver from years ago. You do. So Andy used to make some really, really good bits of gear. He made us, like, you know, underground tents and all sorts of stuff for expeditions. So I can speak to him and see if he'd want to make you something. So I think it's got its place, because you can't move that. You can. It takes a lot of time to set up and pack. And if you've got a dedicated team for that, it's going to take them time, and they want to be able to leapfrog, set up ahead of this casualty and so on. So I think it's worth having a really quick fix.
Stretcher packaging with Greg and Nikki. Any thoughts on that? Anything particularly came out of that, Nikki? Because
Well, we tried the new nappy harness. And the first group, we had a bit of a faff with it because none of us had seen it being put on before. But once we got that sorted, it's really easy.
yeah. So is that our piece of kit now? Have we got that, or is that
Yeah,
something we borrowed?
Oh, Jim donated that nappy stretcher.
Any other thoughts on the stretcher packaging? Yes, Piers.
We're getting a bit close on time, so we didn't put that nappy harness on. But just query how easy it is to use with Casualty Comforts. If you're in a long stretcher carry, how easy is it to get a
you'd
CV in there or something?
put it all on beforehand. If you've got a long carry.
It opens up. You just
But I
don't
would
clip
say
it.
it's actually easier than having somebody in a sit harness. So it's no harder than a sit harness.
So on to the stretcher haul on the pitch with the new bridle, and thank you very much to Joel for that. Also using the new dummy. It's got its test run. So I'm just writing down something that Joel mentioned, which is ring hangers, because we had the roof ones, which would have perhaps been better as ring hangers rather than plate hangers.
Make sure those bolts are hammered in deep enough that you can actually get a nut on the ring hanger and a nut as well.
Did have some ring hangers here.
Did we? All right.
Yes.
What we could have done, possibly, we didn't really need it, I think you need an access rope with that, because if you need a barrow buoy, we had no actual independent system for that.
Yeah, we didn't use a barrow buoy today, and it did snag a couple of times, and it probably showed where actually it would have been a handy thing to have, wouldn't it? But
The good thing that came from that was that certainly on one of the teams, we actually did a changeover. So we actually went from lower, got the stretcher caught, so we then went to a haul, sorted it out, and then lowered again. So it actually enabled us
problem solve it.
to actually change the direction as well, not just the orientation. So you got the team used to doing the changeover, actually hauling haul, lower haul.
There was a fairly critical thing came out, because Piers was saying that you've had discussions now in the Welsh team about the call signs. So generally, I think from my point of view, it's international. Anybody with a climbing background or work background or anything, or caving background and ladder climbing and so on, take in, slack, stop, these signals everyone's familiar with. And I was emphasising to people, never ever use the word slack in a sentence unless you want slack. So don't, for example, use take in slack, because you might only hear the word slack and pay out rope. Everyone needs to get that in their heads. But Piers was saying that someone in the Welsh team is saying they don't want to use the word slack. What do they want to use?
Ease.
Ease. And,
because it's easy to use slack in a sentence and mean the opposite, they're suggesting we don't use the word at all, and then there's no ambiguity.
It's not an easier word to hear, is it?
No.
Please, it's like it doesn't sound quite as...
yeah, I think echoey chambers, waterfalls, rocks falling, noise. Take in is very different to slack, and I think I just don't think you change that, because it's international, and if you know.
I think I'd agree with that. Having climbed a lot with novices, and I've seen exactly what happens when you do use single word terms for take instead of take in.
Yeah.
And people they just hear one syllable and then they lower.
What about the international signal 3 blasts on the whistle for down?
No, absolutely. Yeah. You know,
Let out slack. Or
that's it. No, I think everyone needs to know whistle signals.
And the other thing that wasn't standardised at all was also the idea of whether we use the term fall or lower. So we did have at one point somebody saying slack instead when they wanted to lower the. So it was like more slack on red, but it wasn't slack that was wanted; it was lowering on red type thing. So again, you know, we've really got the 4 calls, or 5 calls, which is all lower.
Haul is mistakable for pull. I've had that before.
At least they mean the same.
Yeah, so
So it doesn't matter.
Yes, you're right.
I just got one comment. I was at the rig side and I thought there was too much conversation going on and I couldn't hear the calls. And it should only be the one person leading and calling. And so I was relying on someone next to me giving me the signal, and that's not very good.
The Chinese whisper.
Yeah.
It is one of those things that we always try and do, and obviously it wasn't enough attention paid to that today, which is keeping the silence within the group so that you can hear the
Call
calls.
horn on a lanyard.
Yeah.
That's one person.
And that sort of kind of brings my second point is, just for practice, would it been useful if each group had a designated leader for one, activity. So, you're the leader, and then you know where you stand. Because the leaders emerge sometimes, but it wasn't clear.
are you thinking from a training point of view?
From a training point
Because
of
we did have designated leaders who were running each session,
not necessarily,
but then who's actually doing
within the group practicing
the leadership on the...
Yeah, I mean, we had one by default on an activity and on 2 of the activities, and it worked really well. It was a different person each time, and it worked really well. But going into an activity, I didn't know who was going to be leading, and I need to know that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's vital on the stretcher lifts. And I was going to sort of come back to Nikki to say about, because we've just been talking about calls and that, the standardisation of call lifts, for lifting the stretcher. So do you want to just mention that? I mean, I know you probably did it on the session, but
So we've moved away from 1, 2, 3 lift, 1, 2, 3 lower, 3, 2, 1, all this lot. First of all, is anybody not ready? So then if there's complete silence, we know we're good to go. And then it's ready, brace, lift, and ready, brace, lower. So again, it cuts out the ambiguity of do we lift on 3 or,
And I think that blends in with like fire brigade.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they
it
still
is.
use that
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah. That's yeah.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but
They go with, if they're going to slide, extracting someone from a vehicle, they go with, ready, brace, slide as well. They vary that slightly. Describe the action they're going to do, basically.
I think the other thing that might be quite handy, which we didn't really talk about today, was everybody knowing how far they're lifting up, because that's important as well. I mean, everyone needs to know how far they've got to go.
Yeah, that's why I stopped you on when I did it with you, because it was understanding the position you needed to be in, to how far you had to be able to lift to get comfortable while you did the next bit.
Yeah. So we didn't really touch on that today. I think Henry used it a little bit, but people need to know how high they're going
Well, that was the thing, was that some people at that point, some people were kneeling on 1 knee, and some people were down on 2 knees.
Yeah.
And there was no way you're going to be able to rest the casualty once you've lifted, and it's going to be very difficult to lift high enough when you're on both knees. So,
Yeah.
and equally, you've got no stability. The other tendency is you try and lift, you tend to get pulled into the person opposite you.
And I know
when you're on your knees.
we sort of think, oh yeah, stretcher, putting someone in a stretcher, yeah, what do we need to practice that for? But we do. We need to practice it.
Yeah.
In awkward positions as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, we went after that first session, we went back to basics and we set up in a really, really easy position, because we need to know the basics of how to do it properly first before you go and do it in a more awkward position. But we do need to practice awkward positions as well when we get a bit more fluent with it.
Yeah. Okay, on to Larkin Frame then. Anything particularly came out from what you saw, Colin and Kev, or between the teams? Or
The only thing was that somebody noticed that the two large pulleys at the top of the A-frame with it's a very sort of U-shaped connection.
It was an HMS crab, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or a round-ended
Yeah,
crab.
because we used to have more of a flat base and the pulleys would hang vertically, whereas this one, when they were loaded, were pushing out, and the ropes weren't running smoothly on the wheels, and they were rubbing on the end of the cheek. So I think somebody suggested that we add a crab, which will allow the pulleys to drop down and hang vertically. So whether when it's packed away, ready for use, that it has an additional small steel crab.
Can't you replace the first link?
Yeah,
Replace it with a crab, a pointy crab. You look at that then.
Yeah.
the other thing, Tom, is he here still?
Yeah, I'm just coming
Yeah,
to it.
go on.
If we can get a couple of photos taken of the frame, set up, laminate them, put them in the box, that'd be quite helpful, because putting it together is not complicated. The only bit that's going to get you is making sure the connectors at either ends are actually facing the right way. If you've just got a couple of images that's in a sheet there, you can quite happily send a couple of guys off, just go and get that built. And that can be done in the background somewhere, because sod's law is that when you've got to do it for real, the people who really know what they're doing are probably going to be underground at that point.
Yeah, good.
I think on that as well, the depot training, we need to do some basic rope work as well again, for those who haven't done much of it.
Yeah, we're catching up on the last 2-3 years, aren't we, really, guys? You know, that's what it's all about. Yeah, yeah.
After George's rescue in OFD back in November, we were sort of thinking, right, what would happen if we were dealing with a really big one on our patch, something like Otter Hole, far end tunnels left, and or maybe the end of the remelt in Wet Sink, where you could be breaking that 54-hour record and going 60 plus to get a casualty out. And of course, South Wales had the advantage of a rescue headquarters 5 minutes from the cave entrance, nice big club hut, perfect situation really. We've got the trailer, etc. We've got that. They haven't actually got a trailer, I don't think, have they? So that's an advantage. But a muddy car park is not really your best HQ. So one of the things I did was a little bit of work in developing our sort of headquarters resilience. We have used St Arvan's previously, St Arvan's Village Hall for Otter when there was the Laura Rescue 19 years ago, and I've refreshed and renewed sort of contact with the committee there. I've also spoken to the racecourse at Chepstow, and they're willing to let us use their Coral Suite, which when I went was set up for the Welsh Grand National with champagne glasses, etc. And we've got the use of the jockey quarters for sleeping and even, etc. So we've got some good HQs planned. But what we also thought was, well, you don't want everyone just rocking up for, a 60-hour rescue and then sort of having to send people home, because we need, particularly with Otter, you've got the tidal sump. You're going to have shifts very much linked around when the tides, and stuff are open. So the idea came up from when we reviewed this back in December at the last training, was some kind of live scheduling way of sort of getting timetabling shifts underground and updating it and getting that information out to people. And of course, Sarkle's got a great sort of initial call-out response to it. And we can, like this morning, I could look in and see that how many people are coming, etc. But it's very difficult to then schedule people for 2 days' time. Like who's going to come you know, for the shift from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock in 2 days' time. So one of the things that came out of that was using a cloud-based system, and the wardens have now trialled it twice. Once using the depot, but also the last time was from the comfort of our homes and on laptops, PCs, phones or whatever, using Google Slides to sort of set up a page or a series of pages where the membership can comment. They can actually go on to like what might be page 2, the timetable for the first day's rescue shifts, and can comment and say, yeah, I can do, you know, 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. And they can comment, and then a warden has the sort of editing capability to actually then put them into that, and then that immediately, you know, happens sort of in live time. So, you know, a click and it's done, and then everyone can see this document when it's open. You don't have to refresh or anything; it's just happening at the time. You can even see when the wardens are on there. There's a little logo icon showing that they're editing the page, etc. And you can have a list of comments. The history stays there. And you can actually sort of schedule people down for a fairly complex timetable over 3 days, remotely, you know, wherever you are, and you can get it on your phone as you're travelling there and say, yeah, I've been confirmed for 8 o'clock or whatever it is. So we were still in the sort of the, you know, trial stage with wardens, but we would like to at some point do like a tabletop exercise with the whole membership. Send it, you know, a link, which is all you need, to a document. You may have to download the app. We are also thinking of trialling, before we definitely go with the model we're going to go with, the Microsoft version of it, I think Pete was talking about.
Because we get all that Microsoft now.
So we'll be double checking on what actual version we go with, but it's going to be some kind of web cloud-based system where we can sort of, you know, get people commenting on the actual document, and then you know, there can be a load of other information about where to go, you know, times to meet, equipment to bring. You can put anything you want in there, maps, you know, videos. You could do anything in there. So yeah, we'll want to trial that out, and it'll be not, you know, as a rescue exercise itself. It'll be a sort of just something we do one evening, something like that, which we'll sort of give notification for. So that, I mean, that's probably enough information about that for now till we trial it out.
So from my perspective, big thanks to everybody coming out today and doing what you've done. The little stickers that we've been giving out, they're just a way of saying, a bit of saying thank you, but actually they've got a really good purpose, because, you know, if you're turning up at places, you know, and there's a cordon set up being run by the police or whatever, there's just a very simple ID of that you are something to do with the rescue. Thanks to Jim for the donation of the harness. I mean, when we saw it back in December, we played around with it. I thought it was brilliant, and thanks for that.
What I'm always trying to do is make sure that we sort of schedule to finish like now, rather than at sort of 5 o'clock at night, because, you know, there is more jobs to do at the end of a day, and people have then got long journeys, some people. So, you know, if anyone's able to help out with that, then that's great as well.
And thanks to the guys from Mendip for coming over. Thanks for Pierce coming over from South Wales, and everybody, you know, and the new people that have come along. It's great. Absolutely superb. I think that's about it. Thank you, and thanks to everybody that ran the sessions as well.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much for that. And I'll done a little bit of video. Paul's done a bit. I think we'll try and sort something out and put something.